You know, the suburban dream. Manicured lawns that whisper of conformity. Quiet streets where the only sound is the occasional chirping of an automated sprinkler system. The gentle hum of what passes for peace and quiet in our modern world. Sounds idyllic, right? A safe haven, a little slice of the American dream. Until that dream takes a sudden, sharp turn into a Kafkaesque nightmare, and the benevolent-sounding Homeowners Association reveals its true colors as a petty, tyrannical regime. You ever had someone look at something perfectly normal, perfectly fine, a part of your own private property, and decide it's a personal affront to their very existence? Drop a comment below. Let me know where you're watching from, because I guarantee you've got an HOA story. But I'm willing to bet it doesn't involve a fortified underground command center triggering a government-level panic. My name's Alex. I'm a quiet guy, in my late 50s, recently retired. For 35 years, I was steeped in the world of defense contracting, my specialty. Designing and building secure, survivable facilities. Think top-secret data centers impervious to EMPs. Hardened communication hubs designed to withstand a direct hit from, well, let's just say, a lot. My blueprints were classified, my work was meticulous, and my focus was always on redundancy, resilience, and absolute security. When I finally hung up my hard hat, all I wanted was peace. I bought a nice, unassuming house in a perfectly unremarkable neighborhood, the kind where nothing ever really happened. And in my backyard, nestled discreetly beneath a meticulously maintained but utterly ordinary-looking garden shed, I had my personal magnum opus, my multi-purpose underground utility vault. This wasn't some prepper's dirt hole with canned beans. This was a state-of-the-art storm shelter, an emergency command center, designed with the same rigorous standards I applied to federal projects. It had its own power, air filtration, redundant communication systems, and enough hardened concrete to shrug off anything short of a direct asteroid impact. To me, it was comfort, security, the ultimate peace of mind for my family. And crucially, it was perfectly legal. I'd submitted the original blueprints, carefully redacted, of course, to describe it as a subterranean utility and storage facility with advanced environmental controls, to the City Planning Department and the then HOA board years ago. They'd approved it. It was documented, filed, and utterly legitimate. To Brenda McMillan, however, it was an unapproved structure, an eyesore, and an affront to her newly acquired suburban kingdom. Brenda McMillan, the new HOA president. Mid-50s, sharp, almost aggressively geometric bob haircut that looked like it was carved from granite. Her perpetual pursed lips seemed to be in a constant state of disapproval. She moved in just 3 houses down, a whirlwind of self-importance and clipboards. Her campaign for HOA president was less about community improvement and more about imposing her singular vision of perfection on us all. She ran on a platform of tightening standards and restoring aesthetic integrity. What that really meant was she wanted everything to look exactly the same, and if it didn't, it had to go. My shed, with its slightly unusual dimensions and reinforced appearance, was one of her first and most enduring targets. It started subtly, as these things often do. A polite but firm notice slipped under my door, folded with surgical precision. It cited architectural consistency and maintaining property values, gently suggesting I consider a more traditional shed design. I responded, equally politely, with a copy of my original, stamped, and approved blueprints from both the city and the previous HOA board. I thought that would be the end of it. The sound of crickets followed. For about a week. Then came the second notice. This one was sterner, the font bolder, the tone accusatory. It demanded immediate rectification of the non-compliant structure, and hinted at significant fines if I didn't comply within 7 days. It even cited a vague bylaw, Section 4.12, subsection C, exterior accessory structures. A bylaw I knew didn't exist in that context. This time, I didn't just send the blueprints. I attached a formal letter from my lawyer, a no-nonsense individual named Marcus Thorne, simply stating that the structure was fully compliant and any further harassment would be met with legal action. Brenda, however, wasn't one to back down. She was a dog with a bone, especially if that bone was my unapproved structure. The notices started escalating. Daily fines, each one a crisp, official-looking document detailing abstract violations and demanding payment. Threats of a property lien, a direct assault on my ownership, and even vague mentions of potential code violations and fire hazards that she was obligated to report to the city. She even tried to get the city's code enforcement and fire department to launch an investigation, but my original approved plans were already on file, making her efforts fruitless, much to her obvious frustration. Then came the demand for an interior inspection, citing community safety concerns and the need to ensure no hazardous materials were stored. Brenda insisted on gaining access to my shed. This was the line: my private, secure space containing sensitive equipment and information. My sanctuary. I politely refused, again citing privacy and the fact that it was a legally approved private structure. My lawyer's next letter was much less polite, referencing proprietary systems and sensitive equipment that, if compromised by unauthorized access, could lead to severe consequences for the HOA. Vague enough to be intriguing, specific enough to sound absolutely terrifying to someone unfamiliar with the world of defense, contracting, and federal regulations. Brenda interpreted my calm, legal replies not as steadfast adherence to the law, but as defiance. Her frustration mounted, twisting into a burning obsession. She started spreading rumors throughout the neighborhood. My shed wasn't just an eyesore, it was a health hazard, a secret meth lab, a lair for exotic animals, a den for unspeakable hobbies. The gossip spread like wildfire. Some neighbors, intimidated by Brenda's force of will, started eyeing my shed suspiciously. Others, the sensible ones, just rolled their eyes, but kept their distance. Brenda was a force, and few wanted to cross her. She even tried to dig into my background, contacting old colleagues, hoping to unearth something scandalous. She found nothing but a spotless record and a reputation for extreme discretion. Meanwhile, I was busy. While Brenda was busy sharpening her claws, I was quietly sharpening mine. I knew my legal standing was solid, but I wasn't content with merely winning a lawsuit. I wanted to end Brenda's reign of terror for good. My lawyer, Marcus, bless his pragmatic heart, found the whole situation an amusing challenge. "Alex," he'd said, leaning back in his leather chair, a wry smile playing on his lips, "you're sitting on a goldmine of HOA overreach. Just keep responding politely, legally. Let her dig her own grave. We'll simply ensure the hole is deep enough for her to get truly stuck." So I did. I allowed Brenda to dig her own hole. Every single piece of communication from her, every threatening notice, every fine, I meticulously documented it. I cross-referenced her bylaw citations, finding them either non-existent or grossly misapplied. I filed FOIA requests for the HOA's financials, quietly uncovering a pattern of questionable expenditures under Brenda's leadership, inflated vendor contracts, unauthorized consulting fees, and a suspicious lack of transparency. I recorded every public interaction with her, always within legal limits. I also began reaching out to some of the quieter neighbors, those who Brenda had previously intimidated, subtly gauging their willingness to speak up when the time came. Many were eager for a change. I also set my stage. The bunker, while fully self-sufficient, had external deterrents designed for precisely this kind of scenario. I ensured the hidden external speakers were fully operational, loaded with carefully crafted audio files. The flashing red lights, designed to mimic emergency government alerts, were tested. And, most importantly, I made a few discreet phone calls. One to a friendly contact in the county planning department, presenting him with Brenda's escalating threats and my extensive documentation, inviting him to witness Brenda's community compliance walkthrough firsthand. Another to Marcus, my lawyer, ensuring he would be there, ready to serve Brenda with a lawsuit that would make her head spin. Then came the grand finale. Brenda, in her infinite wisdom and insatiable hunger for control, decided a public spectacle was in order. She announced a community compliance walkthrough with great fanfare, posting notices on every lamppost. Ostensibly, it was to educate residents on HOA bylaws and ensure neighborhood harmony. In reality, it was a thinly veiled attempt to publicly shame me, expose my illegal structure, and make an example of me for all to see. She even hired a locksmith from a nearby town, a nervous-looking fellow named Gary, claiming she had the authority to force entry if I continued to be uncooperative. She wanted a show, and I was more than happy to provide one. It was a beautiful Saturday morning. The sun was shining, painting the meticulously mowed lawns in a golden glow. Birds were singing, oblivious to the impending drama. And Brenda, looking like a suburban general in her perfectly pressed linen pantsuit, marched up my driveway. She was flanked by two equally zealous board members, Mrs. Henderson and Mr. Davies, their faces set in grim determination. Behind them trailed a dozen curious neighbors, some clutching coffee cups, others with smartphones subtly pointed in my direction, ready to capture the spectacle. Brenda even had a bullhorn, for crying out loud. A bullhorn. Mr. Peterson. She boomed, her voice amplified and distorted, echoing through the quiet street. As per our previous communications, and in the interest of community safety and compliance, we are here today to conduct a mandatory inspection of your unauthorized structure. We will no longer tolerate your non-compliance. Gary, the locksmith, looking acutely uncomfortable, shuffled forward, his bag of tools clinking ominously. A few neighbors whispered, their eyes darting between Brenda's resolute face and my innocuous-looking shed. This was it. I'd been watching from my living room window, sipping my lukewarm coffee, a small, knowing smile playing on my lips. I gave it a moment, letting the drama build, letting Brenda savor her moment in the sun. Then, slowly, deliberately, I reached down and pressed a single, unmarked button on a discrete control panel subtly integrated into the wall beside my couch. Immediately, a piercing, high-frequency alarm, unlike anything they'd ever heard in a quiet suburban neighborhood, ripped through the air. It wasn't just loud, it vibrated in your bones, a sound designed to disorient and warn, a sound that spoke of serious, unignorable protocol. Coupled with the alarm, hidden red strobe lights, previously undetectable, flashed ominously from the reinforced base of the shed, illuminating a series of small, precisely engraved warnings on its blast-resistant door. Authorized access only. Federal penalties for unauthorized entry. Critical infrastructure protection protocol activated. And then, a synthesized, authoritative voice, cold and utterly devoid of emotion, boomed from hidden external speakers, cutting through the alarm like a knife. Unauthorized entry detected. Security protocols initiated. Stand down immediately. Federal sanctions imminent. Failure to comply will result in further escalation. Brenda's bullhorn dropped from her suddenly limp hand, clattering loudly on my asphalt driveway. The locksmith froze mid-step, his face pale, eyes wide with genuine fear. The neighbors gasped, some taking an involuntary step back, others fumbling with their phones, realizing this was far beyond typical HOA drama. It sounded like something out of a sci-fi movie or a high-security government facility. Because, in a way, it was. That was my cue. I stepped out onto my porch, calm, composed, still holding my coffee cup as if this was just another Tuesday. My lawyer, Marcus, impeccably dressed and radiating quiet authority, was right behind me, a thick, pristine briefcase in hand. And with him, a man in a crisp county planning department uniform, looking utterly unimpressed by Brenda's theatrics. "Brenda," I said, my voice, though soft, cutting through the residual alarm. "I believe there's been a slight misunderstanding." The county planning representative, Mr. Davies, stepped forward, holding up a file almost as thick as Marcus's briefcase. Ms. McMillan, he stated, his voice professional and clear. We've reviewed Mr. Peterson's property records extensively. This structure, accurately referred to as a multi-purpose underground utility vault, was legally approved with all necessary permits and engineering specifications on May 12, 2007. It is in full compliance with all county zoning and building codes. Furthermore, Mr. Peterson has provided exhaustive documentation regarding the sensitive and proprietary nature of the systems housed within, which grants it additional protections under both state and, as you just heard, certain federal guidelines concerning critical infrastructure. Any attempt to force entry without a valid court-issued warrant could result in severe legal repercussions for all parties involved, including the HOA itself. Brenda's jaw worked, opening and closing uselessly. She looked from the county official to me, then to the still flashing red lights and the very official-sounding, ominous voice that continued to intermittently warn of federal sanctions. Her face, usually so composed and rigid, crumpled. Her carefully constructed facade of authority was cracking under the pressure of undeniable legality and public humiliation. My lawyer Marcus then stepped forward, his voice crisp and direct, utterly devoid of sympathy. And Ms. McMillan, he stated, given the documented pattern of harassment, defamation, acted blatant attempt at illegal entry onto private property, a highly litigious act. I assure you, Mr. Peterson is initiating comprehensive legal proceedings against you personally and the HOA board for significant damages. We have ample, meticulously gathered evidence of your chronic misuse of HOA funds to pursue this personal vendetta, including inflated invoices for consulting services and security assessments that conveniently align with your own personal interests. We will be seeking full reimbursement for all legal fees, as well as substantial punitive damages for the emotional distress and professional interference you have caused. Consider this your official notice. He handed a thick, bound packet of papers, a veritable novel of legal accusations and supporting evidence, to a trembling Brenda. The scene descended into pure chaos for Brenda. Gary, the locksmith, already halfway down the driveway, was scrambling to pack up his tools, mumbling apologies and denying any knowledge of the situation. Mrs. Henderson and Mr. Davies, Brenda's loyal board members, suddenly found urgent reasons to be elsewhere, melting into the confused crowd of neighbors. The homeowners, previously curious and a little fearful, now looked at Brenda with a potent mixture of disbelief, schadenfreude, and utter satisfaction. Brenda, completely exposed and humiliated, tried to bluster, to stammer out an excuse about just doing her job, but her credibility had utterly evaporated. Her face was bright red, her eyes darting frantically, looking for an escape. She looked utterly ridiculous, standing there clutching her useless bullhorn. Her grand plan to expose me having spectacularly backfired, exposing only her own misguided tyranny. Within a week, Brenda McMillan, citing unforeseen personal commitments and health issues, resigned from the HOA board in disgrace. The whispers in the neighborhood suggested a far less dignified departure. Not long after, a for sale sign mysteriously appeared in her front yard. The lawsuit settled quickly, with the HOA agreeing to a significant payment for damages and legal fees. Funded not by the homeowners, but by a special assessment on their D&O insurance, the policy designed to protect against such gross misconduct. The neighborhood changed after that. The oppressive atmosphere lifted. The new HOA president, a mild-mannered librarian named Carol, prioritized transparency and genuine community engagement over petty rules. People started talking to each other again, without the fear of Brenda's watchful eye. My shed became a silent, unassuming monument to standing your ground. No one ever asked about what was really inside, and I never offered to tell. Some secrets are best kept, especially when they serve as a powerful deterrent. So if you're ever dealing with an HOA Karen, remember, sometimes the quietest neighbors have the biggest surprises. And sometimes the best defense is a fortress disguised as a shed. Know your rights. Meticulously document everything. And don't be afraid to let them walk right into their own meticulously prepared trap. It's truly satisfying to watch. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs a good laugh and a reminder that justice can be served, even in the suburbs. And subscribe for more tales of suburban warfare where the good guys actually win.